Hello everybody, this is Shane with Starner's Woodworking, and today I'm going to show you how I made this hard maple butcher block island countertop. Let's get right into it. So to start off here, I'm using my miter saw to cut up some rough 8/4 maple lumber here, and I'm cutting these pieces to around 36 inches because that is a couple inches over my final dimension for the countertop. Now I'm headed over to the planer to mill up all my pieces down, not really to a certain thickness, just to get them flat for now, as I will be heading over to the table saw and re-gluing them up anyways. By the way, everyone, at the time of recording this video, cicada season was in full force, and I live in southern Pennsylvania, so they were out and loud every single day. Luckily, now at editing this video, they are mostly gone, but just bear with me if you hear them in the background. Anyways, now back to the important stuff. So as you can see before, I laid out my boards on top of my island, which my butcher block countertop will be going on top, just to make sure I have enough lumber there. And now I'm going back to my table saw and squaring up an edge. After this, I will be cutting all these boards into roughly 2-inch strips and re-gluing them back together later. Now, the reason that I'm cutting these into strips instead of just gluing the large blocks together is because I really am aiming for that butcher block style top where they have lots of strips throughout it, and it almost reminds me of a bowling lane. So that is the look I'm going for right now. I have all my pieces cut out here, and I'm actually a couple pieces short. So I'm going to get a couple more pieces milled up and lay them out. And then after that, I'm going to be moving to the miter saw and cutting these in different lengths and pieces and then gluing them back together just to give a little mismatch pattern throughout the butcher block. So back over to the miter saw now. The reason that I'm putting those lines through there is just to make sure I can mismatch the grain so it looks like separate pieces of wood when I go to glue it back up again. Now getting out my clamps, and one thing a lot of woodworkers say is you can never have too many clamps, which is definitely true in this moment because I want to make sure there's no gaps or anything in between, so I'm using as many clamps as I can just to make sure that I eliminate the gaps. So I will actually be doing 3 of these glue ups in total. And the reason for that is I want to make sure that these sections can fit through my planer. And in the end, I will go back and do a large glue up with those 3 pieces. This in return will save me a lot of time in sanding. So now I'm going back and tightening all my clamps as tightly as I can with my hands to make sure I can get a good glue seam along all the cracks. And one thing I found with these pipe clamps is they actually fit perfectly on the handles, so I can use a large pipe clamp as a lever to gain leverage and get these things tighter than I ever would able to be with my hands. So once I get my 3 separate pieces here laid out, I'm going to send them through the planer, get them all looking nice and flat and smooth and all to the same thickness. Then I'm going to go back to the clamps and put them all on the clamps at one time to create the top. Now just sending these through the planers again, and let me tell you, these suckers were definitely not light, especially being hard maple. These boards definitely packed a punch and were heavy to lug around. You can see here between our three pieces, we still have some gaps between the table. So I'm going to take these over to the table saw and run them both through on each side to get a nice square edge. Back over to the clamps for the last time. During this glue up, I want to make sure to get all three parts as flat as I possibly can, as it'll save me a lot of sanding in the end. And one way I could achieve this is with a domino drill, but sadly, I do not have one of those yet, so hopefully someday I can invest one of them, and that will definitely help me keep these flat. Once that is dry, the first thing that I'm going to do is put a square edge on each side. And I'm using a big square and some C-clamps just to make sure I have a nice sturdy fence for my circular saw, since I don't have a track saw. Now getting out my belt sander, I believe I was using 60 grit here, and I'm just trying to take off a good rough surface everywhere across the board to get rid of those glue marks. In the last frame, you could see a couple cracks, sadly, that I could not get rid of. So here I'm using this Knot Tech wood repair, and what this does is just is like a hot glue substance that fills in any cracks, and it can be sanded just like wood, and it creates a perfect hidden bond. And now I'm just going back and refilling in any little crack I can find just to make sure there's nothing that can get into that over time. There was also a knot up in the top left corner there that I was using the same stuff to fill. Now here I'm using a 3/16 inch round over bit to put a soft edge on all the corners of the top, and this really just gives it a professional look in my opinion. Now that I got a round over on all the edges here, I'm going to get out my palm sander and work my way up through the grits and finish this puppy and make it nice and smooth. Now, I'm not going to bore you all with all this time spent sanding because I know you've all done it before and seen it before, but I definitely spent a good hour sanding the top and the bottom just to make sure I get a good flat surface. Here, I'm just spraying a light mist of water over the top just to raise the grain, and then I'm going back and to resand that again. Finally, it is time for the best and final part. I'm using some wipe-on polyurethane here as a finish. I'm going to put 2 layers on the top and only 1 on the bottom because it will really never be seen or used. Once I let all my coats finish and fully cure and dry, I'm going to go back with some 600 grit sandpaper just to take off the rough bumps and edges, and then use some finishing wax to make the surface nice and smooth. After that, all that's left to do is assemble the top to the island base, and then it's all complete. Thank you guys all so much for watching and making it to the end of the video. Hope you guys all enjoyed so much, and if you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a like. I will actually be dropping another video showing how I made the island base in the future. Thank you.